Welcome to The Agenda.
What's more dangerous than a nuclear weapon? We'll tell you today on The Agenda.
What's on the agenda today?
What agenda? 2030 agenda.
What's the ultimate agenda?
Is there an agenda?
Global agenda.
It's run by people with agendas.
It's crunch time in this whole agenda.
Everybody has an agenda.
With all the current issues on our agenda.
It's my agenda for you.
Courtesy of those people and their agenda.
What really sets the agenda?
What's number one on their agenda?
So, what's on the agenda for today?
The next subject on the agenda.
Welcome to The Agenda. I'm your host, Edward Zoll. I'm here with my illustrious friend and world adventurer at this point, Jesse Beltran. Of course, Jesse is a world-renowned expert at this point on Havana syndrome, on targeted individuals, and he's also a hypnotist. So hopefully he hasn't done that to me. But welcome back to The Agenda. Okay.
Well, it's great to be here in lovely London.
Yes, lovely and rainy. It really lived up to the stereotype. We got sunshine on the first day.
That's only because we brought it.
Yeah, exactly. We brought the sunshine, and then it just went right back to the rain and all the other dreary things that happen here in this city. But we've had a very exciting trip. Now, we're joining you, of course, after returning. So we had to do, because of our interesting trip, we had to make sure we worked to get the footage exported and all the things out prior to us kind of reporting this live. So you're going to be seeing this actually when we're safe, hopefully. If you don't see this, then obviously, well, it didn't happen. But anyway, we had an incredible interview with a former MI6 operative who also has a PhD in chemistry and went to the Ivy League school here called Oxford.
Correct.
Very smart chap. And also very revelatory, I'd say, that you'd agree. We learned quite a bit, and things I don't think we've heard before from people from this community.
Now, in the 20 years that I've been covering this phenomenon, this is one of those holy grails. That's how important this interview is, in my opinion. And it's very rare that we come across in life people who really, truly, who are humble in their approach. And I'm not sure if this individual really understands the gravity and the importance of what he shared with us today. It is, in my book, he's a hero.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. And I think that everybody who is both being attacked by psychotronic warfare, weaponry derived through directed energy, and all the other crazy sorts of nightmarish devices which have come out of this fourth industrial revolution. Everybody that's been hit with these things is not just a victim, but they're survivors. And those that are speaking out, they're really speaking out for thousands. Because for every one Wraith, and his name's Wraith, there's 100 that have kept quiet or have been silenced. They've been pushed to suicide, or worse, they've been killed.
Yeah. Well, us being from the States, a diehard American, and, I, former firefighter, paramedic, I took that oath to protect our Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And, I was really hoping that we would come across a whistleblower who was an American. But I'll take it any way we can.
He was inspired to come forward from Americans. That's what he saw this cowboy on Alex Jones and other places, and he said that you were just so articulate, which is true. I mean, Jesse is a national treasure. Thank God Jesse came about, because I'll just say frankly, before hearing Jesse Beltran explain this topic, it sounded crazy to me too. Okay, and I didn't believe it until seeing Jesse's very methodical presentation, and two, the way that he addressed it so calmly. Because if you hear even a pittance, a small sample of the things that Jesse and others have gone through, you and me and everybody else in this world would not be speaking about it in such a coherent and calm fashion. But you knew this, again, we talked about this before, you knew this, and that's why you trained yourself to communicate it in that manner.
Yeah, well, the phenomenon we're talking about is what is commonly known as Havana syndrome, or they've morphed it into anomalous health incidents. When I was covering it along with a gentleman by the name of Dr. John Hall in 2010, we called it electronic terrorism. And in fact, back then, I did a video to a marketing video so that everyone could learn about this phenomenon. It was called Satellite Terrorism, the New Silent Rape. And that's exactly what these victims, these U.S. civilians that we were documenting back in 2010, were going through. And predominantly, a large majority of the victims are women. Back then, 40% were Caucasian women, recently single, widowed, or divorced, highly educated. Then Caucasian men, and then in the same categories, African Americans, Asians, Hispanics, and it dwindled down from there. But back then, if you went to your physician or sought help as a civilian, you talked about the symptoms, and people are going to say, well, what are the symptoms? You know, we've talked about it before in previous episodes, but for those of you who haven't heard this, the Havana syndrome started in 2016, according to our federal government, amongst U.S. diplomats that were in the embassy in Havana, Cuba. And what they complained about is an acute onset of a strange sound that was being beamed to their heads. And they likened it to an electronic sound of cicadas, which are crickets. And in fact, the U.S. government tried to blame it on the crickets, but it wasn't the crickets. And they didn't take it seriously until the Canadian diplomats started complaining about the same symptoms. The other symptoms that go along with this are short-term, long-term memory loss, severe vertigo, head pain, nausea, vomiting, and electrical shocks to the body. Now, in 2016, a gentleman by the name of retired Lieutenant Colonel Greg Eggering gave testimony at United States Congress, and he said that this phenomenon is real. It's happening not only to our diplomats, but the best of our best in the FBI, CIA, and now it's happening to congressional members. The only problem is they only acknowledge that it's happening to federal employees and their family members, but they forget their family members are civilians. And right now, the only resources available are to those federal employees. But I've been documenting thousands of cases of U.S. civilians who were suffering from the exact same symptoms. Now, we can go deeper down the rabbit hole. Along with these symptoms, a lot of these victims talk about being electronically tortured 365 days a year, 24/7. And they talk about this auditory phenomenon that happens. Also, the federal employees talk about this auditory symptom, but they don't express what it is literally. So what happens is a lot of these victims, both federal and civilians, what happens after the initial onset is eventually that electronic signal turns into voices, okay? Now, if you go to your general practitioner, like we've all been conditioned to do, and you start to complain, as soon as you say those words, you're automatically railroaded into the mental health industry. Now, a lot of you have heard about my investigations, where it led to, and we talk about the Bonnie Keller case. Now, Bonnie Keller in early years, her husband thought she was crazy. He was going to divorce her. She was diagnosed with schizophrenia because she said, and she believed wholeheartedly, that she was non-consensually implanted. Okay. And that was far-fetched for people to comprehend. And what ultimately ended up happening, she was one of my very first clients, and we did RF testing, and she was coming up positive. And based on those initial tests, she was able to obtain medical imagery. And ultimately, they ended up doing surgical removal of 3 biosensors that were non-consensually implanted in her. So guess what, folks? She wasn't crazy after all. But our system automatically labeled her with mental illness, schizophrenia, okay?
And that's part of the insidious nature of this weapon, is that if you are targeted, half the time, society is going to finish you off for your assailant, okay? They're going to commit you to a psych ward. They're going to get you on drugs. You're going to lose your loved ones. It's the worst kind of a trap. And what was so interesting about our conversation here, because you mentioned, up until now, we know some civilians, a lot of civilians have been hit. We know government employees have been hit. We know that. What we have now found out, we have definitive proof of this. We've heard rumors of this, but we got confirmed proof of this. Intelligence agencies, including those in the Five Eyes, MI6, which is America's version, England's version of the CIA. Okay. They're using it to communicate with their agents in the field. And we spoke with Rife, who he's been targeted. He actually is an operative who was both tortured through this, it was used to hurt him, and he describes this in detail to us, but also it was used in the mission setting. While he was on a mission, he even says it saved his life multiple times. A walkie-talkie in his head that he can't talk back to per se, but he could receive messages and signals, and it would be in a way that no one around him would even know.
Well, actually, it is a two-way communication system. What Rife has shared with us, and this is the first time we had a whistleblower of this caliber. He's Oxford educated, PhD in chemistry.
Very hard to dispute. Yeah.
Very articulate. I mean, he has all of the receipts. He has the credentials, and his experience is, just top level. And for him to come out and express to us, his superiors ordered him to take on this new communication system. And he thought he was doing what he was supposed to. And what he wasn't aware of is the negative aspects of this. So what he shared with us, and you're about to hear him, and it is phenomenal, incredible. And this is why I say he's a hero, because we've been waiting for someone like this to come forward. There are a lot of CIA agents that came forward and talked about being assaulted and being victims of this technology, but not one of them has come forth and really given the true aspect of what this system is about. Now, what Rafe shares is this is the communication system that these MI6 assets use to speak back and forth, getting rid of traditional Dropbox formats and communicating or getting assignments or getting information or traditional digital ways that they were utilizing. And he thought this was a great thing. They were all convinced and told that this is going to be something that could save your life. And in his case, he talked about at times how it did, but what he didn't sign up for, and he said this, once he realized how intrusive it was. Basically, this is synthetic telepathy at real-time latency. That means your thoughts could be transmitted and you can receive information in real time. So let's say he was out on a mission and you were with foreign assets or in a situation where you were with an enemy and you've infiltrated them so that you don't get exposed, and you can exchange information. You can do this in real time in those scenarios. You can imagine how that would be a benefit, okay? Not talking, only thinking and communicating this way, okay? But what he also shared, if an asset or an agent didn't fall in line or follow orders verbatim, it then became a torture device. And that's where the lines are in parallel with the victims and the clients that I have seen over the years, with the contacts that I have in the intelligence agencies, where they are also victims and being victimized in this way. He point blank told us that this is what was done to him. And he protested, and they eventually stopped and went back to traditional ways of communication. Now, when you hear his interview, and you'll understand, each and every one of you watching this, what a golden gem opportunity this has been. As soon as we knew that he shared with me, and I said, "Are you sure you want to do this, Grail?" And he says, "Yes, it's important that we share this with the world, because if I can do anything to save lives or make them better in any way, then I want to do it."
Yes, and that's why we flew over here within, I think, a week or so of getting the story. And of course, this is so important because I feel, especially with the new concentration on NK Ultra and all the other things. By the way, if you're like, well, why aren't you talking about Iran? Why aren't you talking about the Epstein files? This was in the Epstein files, mind you. We'll go into that after this. The mind control, skull-to-brain technology, psychotronic weaponry in the Epstein files. If you haven't seen it, we'll have to do an whole episode on that. And secondly, with Iran? I mean, look what just happened in Venezuela. They used the discombobulator, a directed energy-based weapon. And now we're wondering, well, okay, why are we in this war with Iran? What are the threats to people in our own soil? Folks, the same weaponry that has been used in Venezuela against Venezuelan people and the Cuban guards, that can be used on Americans and is being used on Americans. What we're saying is this is Havana syndrome. It's one of the many ways that psychotronic warfare has morphed into this reality we're now having to grow and live and operate in. And I'm telling you, I think Rafe is one of the keys to understanding this.
My name is Rafe Hassel. I'm a British citizen. After graduating from Oxford University with a degree in chemistry, I was coerced into becoming an intelligence asset here in the United Kingdom. The work, in inverted commas, that I've been doing involved a lot of technology that became known as related to Havana syndrome. There are several flavors of this technology. It is not just for surveillance. Fairly brutal directed energy weapon systems that are designed to incapacitate. So in my case, it is a dental implant, which I had absolutely no need for. And in fact, the X-rays show that it is a weird shaped object that is in my upper right molar. I think it is completely fair to describe this technology as a means of synthetic telepathy. It has been used against me. They wanted me to use this system for communications. It can provide a digital signal of your internal monologue. It was absolutely clear as day voice of one of my handlers to explain to me, this is what we've got, this is where we're going with this, and actually we think you're going to like it in the end, so just stick with it. And I was shocked and I was furious. I had what I then came to understand was a common attack vector, which is that I was at the sink, and I think that's been the case of a number of people who have reported. I was washing my hands, so clearly there is conductive effect, metal sink, and so on. And then suddenly I just heard the crackle of electricity around the back of my head. But it was incredibly powerful, and it knocked me to the floor. I couldn't breathe. It took me years to recover, but I was fortunate enough to do so, and I'm fortunate that I didn't die. And that was my introduction, let me say, to the alternative version. And that was not by my own government.
Well, it was once considered a conspiracy theory.
Mysterious brain injuries.
Declassified CIA documents prove that, yes, the CIA actually has been, for decades, researching how vaccines could be used for mind control.
A previously unknown weapon.
Brutal directed energy weapon systems that are designed to incapacitate.
Wounded by a secret weapon.
Individual over a certain period of time will produce psychological and physical reactions.
I immediately felt fullness in my head.
Full body convulsion.
And just a piercing headache.
Like someone squeezing your head.
Absolutely life-altering.
The incidents became known as Havana syndrome.
Havana syndrome.
Directed energy attacks on U.S. soil.
It was happening not only to our diplomats, it's happening to the best of our best in the FBI, the CIA, and now congressional members in Congress.
It is essentially a declaration of war against the United States.
Well, I'm not allowed to talk about it. It discombobulated everything.
Is the government trying to mind control me?
There are a number of resources that wanted to step out, and they're not alive anymore.
And they began to basically beat him to death.
I'm fortunate that I didn't die.
Nobody on this planet has any right to battle tag human beings.
A lot of people have had this holdup with the prospect, oh, an implantable device, Ed, in my teeth, my arm, my head, and it's used to control me or talk to me.
He had the old traditional dental implant, where they were using it as an amplifier to communicate with him remotely. Now we're in this new realm of nanotech, where basically these nano robots are 1/2000th times the width of a hair, and whatever they are programmed to do, they will do. And now he's come forth and he's shared with all of us what this is about. Now, for all of you victims out there, this is redemption for you. This is so important, probably one of the most important interviews we've ever done, I've ever had the opportunity and blessed to encounter. And thank you, Ed, for providing the platforms and the equipment and the expertise to do all this.
It's an excuse to come to London with Jesse, right? Okay.
But here's the bottom line. This is going to change. This is going to be a paradigm shift beyond anyone's expectations, particularly in the mental health industry, because you can no longer deny what is being done out there. So for every one of you out there, where you've had a friend or a family member, you know someone who has mental illness, it may not be genetic. I'll pose this to you. What if it's synthetically induced, like the Bonnie Keller B cases and other cases that we're aware of? Right point blank tells you that this technology exists. It's here. Yeah. He has the receipts. Wow, just what a blessing. But now we circle down the drain, because as I've shared in my demonstrations, and I've been collecting data for some time, and we've even obtained declassified documents and documents that have been publicly made by U.S. Congress about back in 1972. They were already working on this stuff and experimenting on prisoners, and unfortunately, those in the mental health industry. Those,
who are they going to tell? Who's going to believe them? Seriously, that's the thinking that went into this. They picked the most vulnerable in society that people consider have no credibility.
Yeah.
Thus, you could do literally anything to them, including raping their mind, intruding into their soul, and look, obviously torturing some of these people to death.
Correct. Yeah, that's absolutely true. And in those documents in 1972, just think about this. They are already remotely able to monitor your biometrics, meaning your heart rate, your body temperature, your respirations. And in the document, it says, including remotely read your thoughts. That was in 1972. Okay. Now, Ray talks about what he can build systems to beam voices into people's heads. Okay. Very simplistic things we can go and purchase over the internet and create a device that will do this. But now imagine where we now know where we're at, utilizing advanced network systems such as satellite technology, ground-based technology, ground-based microwave transmitters, cell phones, and now they've changed the laws where they used to have restrictions on the distance that you can transmit a signal via Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. Now they've taken those away. Okay.
And we know that partially because of the Nancy Guthrie case, because little small things we pick up on the news side. With me and Jesse were always texting each other throughout the weeks. I texted him this, is that how could they possibly be using a Bluetooth sniffer to look for the heart rate, the heart monitor on Nancy's pacemaker, if the range has not been extended?
Correct.
It obviously has been extended, and look, we're in a new world because of this.
Yeah. What they're looking for is MAC addresses or IP addresses on these items. If it's a transmittal device of any type of computer electronics, you're going to be able to identify that way. And using, my background is in signals intelligence. So in using these types of technologies, you can triangulate and kind of pretty much figure out where something is. Okay. So the bottom line is this. If you can use this technology not only to read a person's minds and transmit information to their minds, okay, into their heads, how deep down the rabbit hole can we get? Okay. I talk about the New World Business Report on page 89, that chapter, this is biological processes. They talk about using this technology not only to affect an adversary in a negative way biologically, physiologically, but they even talk about imprinting memory sets and erasing memory sets. Okay. Now we're delving into a realm where will the future have cognitive freedom for you and I, for example?
Yeah.
or our children or our loved ones. What's the future hold for them if memory sets are going to be implanted into your mind and you won't know the difference. So what the World Economic Forum talks about is in the future, you will own nothing and you will be happy. What if you imprinted that type of memory set into a human and you would not know the difference?
Well, people have heard of virtual reality or augmented reality. What you're describing is manipulated reality, MR. Whereas this new age where there's no defense for it. And by the way, this is a great reason for any congressman or any business owner, men of power and influence, women of influence in society. You should care about this because you can be targeted. Elon Musk could be targeted. President Trump could be targeted. We talk about how this is more deadly than a nuclear weapon. This could destroy society as we know it if it's kept in the hands of a few. And by the way, because right now it's considered completely legal because it's not acknowledged. It's completely legal for someone with this technology to essentially spy on a congressman or President Trump or Elon Musk, but even worse than that, to manipulate. As Jesse said, implant visions maybe in their dreams, create dreams into nightmares, but worse than this, be that constant voice of God almost for people that they will hear, not from the Holy Spirit, not from the Lord, but from an agent or an agency. And we're going to share another segment. Jesse actually sat down and spoke with Rafe about the part of this concept.
The agenda.
The proliferation of this technology in our current unregulated sphere, which is what this is, holds out the prospect of a true dystopia, where I can get myself a sound laser, start walking down the street and just pointing at people. I could do that. That is absolutely within my capability today. You and I could go to Amazon, download the parts. We could just probably get it together in a couple of days. And we can walk down the road and start just pointing at people and saying things to them that only they can hear. Wow. Who would stop us? Who could stop us? In this environment, there is nothing anyone can do. And that is just the tip of the iceberg in what is possible with this type of technology. And that's a fact today. And if you can't deal with that, then you're not fit for purpose. I fully believe that.
You just precipitated a very profound vision in my mind's eye and a thought process. And that is, there is nothing in the law books that would prevent someone from doing exactly what you just described.
Nothing.
There's nothing illegal about it.
And there is no evidence. And that's when, where the rubber hits the road for the general population. And yes, okay, people are, we can say that there is a certain percentage of people who have, anomalous health incidents and so on. And that percentage, that is a bona fide section of people that we can say, we can attribute these effects to this. We don't know that percentage, but there is one. Because we know the technology exists. We know people can put it together, and we know from human behavior that people have come into conflict with one another, and there's nothing to stop them from doing this should they want to. Gaslighting in its ultimate form. There's nothing to stop. And I think that when society becomes more familiarized with this, I think we'll start to see more people come forward and go, gosh, yeah, I thought I was, every time I stand doing the washing up, I'm having these really weird thoughts, but it's usually when I'm just doing the washing up or whatever it may be. Now, the good news is for people like that is that it's very simple to stop. I mean, those basic technologies, you can hold up a sheet of paper in front of your face and that will attenuate almost entirely, unless it's extremely high gain, that audio signal. So that's pretty easy. And with microwaves, sort of similar idea with RFID, you can create ways of protecting yourself. But why
should people be driven to do that? And the answer is people will have to, probably, until the regulatory environment actually acknowledges the reality of today's electromagnetic spectrum.
Which opens up Pandora's box with regard to neural rights, as you and I touched on briefly yesterday.
Yeah.
If the whole game plan was to master this last frontier, which is the human brain, the most powerful or most God-given blessed computer in existence, how do we protect that? Is there enough time in your generation and my generation to protect our children? And that's really why I'm here.
Yeah.
Because I've shared with you my experiences. I no longer consider this about me. I consider this a fight for my children, your children, the generations to come. Because if they have now mastered the ability to manipulate the human mind, the human thought process, the human belief system by utilizing these types of technologies, then what future do they have to be their own creation?
Very difficult and profound question, because I've liked to remind certainly organizations like the IPT here in the UK and anyone else who doesn't get the chance, because I'm going to tell them anyway, to listen or not. But there is maybe an underlying unspoken assumption that we're the guys with our fingers on the levers at the moment. All good. Come back to me in one generation. How many of you have fallen out of favor? How many of your children have found themselves maybe in a slightly antagonistic position with respect to the government on certain policy decisions, with respect to freedom of speech, with respect to their political views, things that we can only speculate about now? And I will guarantee that your future generations will not be all protected as you are now, with this sort of laissez-faire attitude towards the utilization of this technology. And it will always be laissez-faire until it's being properly discussed in public and in the correct forums, be they scientific community, peer reviews. That's just here in the UK. Yes, and until that is done, then it's just laissez-faire. We can't rely on the ethics advisors of intelligence agencies to determine what is the correct approach for dealing with something that is inherently profound like this, that's so systemic, that is so invasive, that is so total. And it needs to be in the light of day, brought into the light of day. Not everything will, but we can start somewhere. Let's start with V2K. It's there. It's real. You can set up a demonstration. You can bring in a senator and you can show him exactly how that works. And, that would be a place to start. Did you hear that, Senator? Yes, I did.
We just had this conversation last week.
Very good.
Yeah.
How would you like to build a system like that and come to the States?
Well, I'll build a system for you, but I have to send it. Actually, there are plenty of people. In fact, there are some really good makers and experimentalists online. I'm sure most of them in the States. I would imagine that you could find.
Yes, I've dabbled with the audio, a device called the Audio Spotlight.
That's it. For example, this would be the place, the perfect place to start.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All you need is to bring someone in, and they can hear something that no one else can. And it's a sound that's developed somehow within their own sort of personal sphere of awareness, and no one can vouch for. No one can vouch for it or say that it happened.
Yeah, and I know I've shared with you that I'm a certified master hypnotist, and can you imagine if, but I'm ethical. I would never do something to someone if, number one, they didn't give consent. Number two, they didn't agree to what the plan was going to be and what we were going to do to benefit them. If you took someone, and there are those out there who have my knowledge and my background, who maybe would not be as ethical. And, specifically we're talking about this phenomenon in itself. It's being utilized in very unethical ways.
Oh, for sure. And that has already been happening.
Yeah. I have cases where the civilians have committed suicide because there were no resources for them. My name's Jesse Beltran. I'm the current president of an organization. Our brand is Mind Nexus Live. I've been one of the leading investigators with the phenomenon called Havana Syndrome or anomalous health incidences. I have been covering this since 2010. I am currently a certified technical counter-surveillance measures expert. I have been the lead in doing what is called nonlinear junctions scanning on individuals. And this process started in the United States. Initially starts with an RF detection, and then we verify it with a nonlinear junction depending on our findings. And basically what we're finding is those who are symptomatic were lighting up at very specific focal areas around the human body and coming up positive for whatever reason for semiconductive or silicon-based materials in those areas. And that's what the nonlinear junction detector is designed to do. And we've recently started a study where we're testing non-symptomatic individuals here in the United Kingdom. They are also lighting up in those same areas as the symptomatic individuals, and that had not been the case prior to that jab. Prior to the jab, those who were non-symptomatic, almost 100% of the time, came up negative. They were coming up pretty much what I would expect a symptomatic person to come up positive. Very high, a lot of areas around the human body hitting at 100%, where the nonlinear junction detection indicated there was silicon-based materials. They had been put on a test basis or a trial basis of zeolite Z, or the masterpiece product. And quite frankly, I was really surprised coming here and doing the secondary exam on these individuals who participated in the testing. There was significant reduction in the areas that were lighting up.
So the results have been absolutely phenomenal and actually better than we could ever have expected. An average reduction across the board so far, and we've got one more day of test results coming in, of 80% reduction of these radio frequencies coming off people's bodies. We've had personal reductions of some people of 98%, but on the whole, it's around about an 80% reduction. Now this is unprecedented because usually in clinical studies, if you were to get a 30% reduction, that is something that people are very happy to see.
This is why, for the first time in 20 years, 15 years specifically, out in the public, that I've supported anything out there. And so this is quite promising. Yesterday was very emotional for me because I never thought that I would see this. I can tell you 100% of the time post-COVID, I've not tested anyone who did not come up positive in the right, left TMJ, the dorsum, occipital portion, and the base of their neck. And for the first time after they've been on this trial, they are not lighting up. And we are seeing anywhere from 75 to 85% reduction in the findings. And this is quite frankly incredible. Right superior shoulder, 95%.
The agenda.
This manipulative reality, Jesse, it's such an important concept because no one is safe. And it's not even a fear-mongering thing to say. It's important to say, even if you have an army of bodyguards. Even an army itself. That did not help Maduro. All right, that did not help Nicolas Maduro, the former president of Venezuela, as 300 of his guards were mentally discombobulated by the discombobulator. Well, even going to what we heard today, anybody could become an unwitting agent by this technology. Anyone could be Agent Smith. Remember in the Matrix, where anyone could, Agent Smith, the virus from the Matrix brain could morph into any individual and become them. What we mean by this is that anybody can become an agent, and an unwitting agent of that, Jesse, and that you, if you've been exposed to nanotech, have been exposed to anything in society at that matter, you've been scanning people for 20 years. You said that after the pandemic, there's no one that doesn't light up.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And we suspect, in part, is a lot of technology was unleashed on the world during the pandemic and after, from the vaccine, from geoengineering, and just from mad scientists having their hands unshackled. Because look what they got away with during the pandemic, folks. You all lived through it, whether you're pro or anti-vaccine, you know. Everything got shut down. Everything got shut down. Now, I don't know if you heard this on your plane. I laughed out loud when I heard this. They were talking about the takeoff procedures, like if there's going to be an emergency and you pull down, the emergency air. They said this, and I was like, wait a minute, what did they say? They said, okay, and anybody wearing, it's version of, so it's English, anybody wearing a mask, a COVID mask, make sure you remove your mask to put on the breathing apparatus so the air can get in. So I'm like, wait a minute. But I thought this thing particularly, and so I might do a skit one down this where you have the mask off, the mask is going to be over their nose, and then the breathing apparatus and the plane's going to go. We all know it was crazy, folks. Even if you're pro-vaccine, just admit to me, you know it's a little bit crazy. All right. Where I'm going with this is that they got to experiment and deploy mRNA technology on the world without really much of public, actual testing beforehand. You were the test. And two, they got to overrule existing rules and scientific objections and political objections, anything from the public, because it was an emergency. All right. And three, they were able to set up the infrastructure, the telecommunication infrastructure, then 5G, now almost 6G, especially after President Trump signed the 6G acceleration initiative in December of this past year, specifically for implantables. Okay, that is right there on the website. And these three things mean that it truly is a new era. This isn't going to be like the last industrial revolutions. This is something far more deadly, because truly now, Jesse, there could be one person that rules a billion people.
That's exactly the seriousness of this issue. And let's even step back before that. If you want to talk about a national security shortfall, this is it. Because you talked about the Matrix, and this biodigital convergence has basically been imposed upon you without your consent, without your knowledge, and now potentially each and every person who has been exposed to this out there is a walking, talking node that can exchange data and receive and exchange data in real time. So now just imagine, we were talking about this discussion earlier about President Trump. There have been several assassination attempts on him. And Dan Bongino talks about a clip where President Trump is literally being hunted from the inside.
Yeah, let's listen to that real quick. Yeah. Listen specifically what he says about the communications being subverted.
Listen to me. Trump is being hunted by professionals who know exactly what they're doing. And because I hate teases, is the Secret Service compromised? Now, I know you say, well, Dan, you brought that up last week. Is there a mole, whether intentional or unintentional, in the Secret Service? I'll talk about that. But someone, let's just say who can be trusted, I spoke to last week at the end of the week, has informed me that their communication system for the Secret Service may be almost entirely compromised. In other words, people trying to hunt and kill Donald Trump may know more about what Donald Trump is doing than Donald Trump is doing. Folks, we got a serious problem. And the problem is the people in charge of the Secret Service right now are not serious people. The people at the top are too busy trying to cover up their own role in the substandard security plan for President Trump. Nothing is going to change. We are in real trouble. I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm not trying to panic anyone. I'm trying to tell you this isn't over. You thought it was over after the first one? We had the second one. You thought it was over after the second one? Folks, there's more. He is being hunted.
Now, you have to wonder, after talking to Rife, is it possible that the Secret Service, you have several members of the Secret Service who are walking, talking nodes? And is that how there are leaks? And is that how his administration is being compromised?
Well, it makes me rethink, was the shot or the many inventions and interventions from this mad scientific class, were they meant to depopulate, or was it meant to manipulate? Because what you're noting that these Secret Service agents who are as loyal to the president of their protectees as they can be, that those individuals could inadvertently, without any knowledge in themselves, be providing information to a third party by that person being able to listen through them.
Correct. Not only listen.
Communicate.
Communicate and see. What you see is being transmitted, okay? That's what these victims have claimed for the years and years and years. Now you have these victims in the intelligence agencies, and a lot of that information is being classified. Now, I've been contacted by the former head doctor of a 3-letter agency who confided in me that the victims that he's treating, 338 federal employees and their family members, and my clients, that their symptoms are the same. There's significant overlap, and he said the only difference is that we were surgically removing biosensors out of some of our cases. Now, we talk about the nuclear technology, nuclear bombs. You know, I don't think there's a human alive that the overall consensus would be that creating nuclear technology probably wasn't the greatest idea for humanity. Probably not for our planet, for sure.
No.
Yeah. And the devastation that it can cause. Now think about this. If you can remotely control or imprint memory sets.
A trauma.
Yeah.
Think of the trauma people felt when they saw Charlie Kirk get shot in the neck.
Correct.
Or the feelings and emotions they felt when they saw President Trump get shot.
Yeah. If you can actually take control of every human being on this planet and imprint it with belief systems that someone who has to be at the top of the food chain controlling this technology decides is best for you. And they'll imprint those memory sets and you won't even know it. Now I'm gonna use this as a very, very visual and auditory example. What if the memory sets in every human being that this one person in control, what if they imprinted that that's God? Okay. What if they change your value system of every living human being on this planet? Their belief systems is entirely. We talk about the nuclear technology, and that probably wasn't a good thing. I would put forward this contention, is that this technology is probably worse than any nuclear bomb. Okay.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Because of the destructive nature. You think nukes are powerful because of what they can destroy, and also, mind the way, for how their existence can incite fear, can excite action. We call about the doctrine of mutually assured destruction. Mad doctrine is literally not using nuclear weapons, but the threat of them existing. If you wield the weapon to literally change the minds of a population, like right now, we want to talk about Iran. Now let's talk about Iran. All right, we're trying to convince, I'm saying the United States and some of our allies are trying to convince the Iranian people to rise up and overthrow their government. Now, wherever you fall in this, you'll understand this metaphor. What's the point of a bombing campaign or an assassination round of leaders and other things if you can just beam in thoughts to the population in that region, and overnight you've conquered them? You've conquered them without even firing a bullet, let alone dropping a nuclear weapon. This is a nuke. You've destroyed societies. and rebuilt them in your image. If you're the evil contenders of this technology, and then I think that we would agree with this, Jesse, there aren't good actors when it comes to this technology. It seems to be overwhelmingly weighed toward bad actors using it to abuse people, change the way they operate, and in a lot of ways hurt them to suicide, hurt them toward destruction of their own family structures. This conversation here with Rafe, I want to share this. And again, all of this has been part of our investigation that's been ongoing for about 8 months or so, and as part of Died Suddenly 2. You can check that out at diedsuddenly.info or at diedsuddenly_ for updates. But the conversation you had with Rafe earlier, I want the audience to see this. The concept of the whole world being reshaped and the dangers which now come from a technology of this power being in the hands of a few evil and at least agenda-driven men and women, that's really the scary prospect. I remember during the first Trump administration, there was this fear that President Trump was being spied on through stingray devices, things being placed around D.C. And look, I bet these things happen, by the way. I've been outside Congress. I've been inside Congress and the White House and all these places. The conversations you hear, and I'll share just one that everyone can think back to. Remember when Vladimir Zelensky got chucked out of the White House, yelled out of the Oval Office live on television? And people watch this like, my gosh, how did this get so tense and distraught? Okay, well, I'll tell you exactly what happened. During the green room, the pre to Volodymyr Zelensky going into the Oval Office, Volodymyr Zelensky was speaking in Ukrainian with his counterparts, and he said these words. He said, "Oh, don't worry, the British have backed us up. The British have encouraged us that we don't have to take any deal here. We're going to just get them to commit arms, and we're going to carry on the war." The thing is, President Trump, one of the Secret Service agents under his charge and was assigned to Volodymyr Zelensky that day in the green room, speaks Ukrainian. So he heard this, relayed it to the White House team, who very quickly told President Trump, and J.D. Vance, Vice President, was in the room. So they went into that exchange. Now you think of them, they see this, you see it on screen, you see this little meeting, it looked very tense. They knew in that moment that Volodymyr Zelensky was about to betray him. So let me put this in the 10,000-foot view. You're not a president. You're not Volodymyr Zelensky. You're not in this. You are a nefarious actor with your own little fiefdom of technology and resources. You're in D.C. or you're anywhere in the world for that matter now because of this technology. You don't need a stingray device to listen in on those kind of conversations. You can take it in. You can trade on it. You can start a war based on it. This level of intelligence, people have been so enthralled by Epstein. And of course, we've delved into these investigations. And Jesse will have to come back on to go through all those papers that we mentioned, by the way, because Epstein was very, very interested in this technology, might have even been at the forefront of funding some of these evil mechanisms. But the reason why the Epstein files were insidious was because of the blackmail aspect, abuse against children. Okay, well, what do you think people are going to do with this technology? This is spying to a degree that you can't even comprehend. This is abuse of children to a degree that none of us, only the devil could fathom.
Well, in the Epstein files, he talks about this was being utilized on children from ages of 15 and adults up to the age of 50.
Yep.
So there was no discretion, why are you going to abuse children in any way, shape, or form, number one? But to do this type of invasive intrusion into not only the mind, but the physiologics of a person, you're not human. You can't be human.
Soulless.
So here's the other thing. You talked about stingray, but what we learned from Rafe, if this is implemented on you without your knowledge, you are a walking, talking stingray. And for those of you who don't know what stingray is, stingray was a device that a lot of law enforcement agencies were purchasing and going out into communities and turning them on. And basically, that stingray device turns into a cell tower, and they were able to intercept all communications over a cell phone without a warrant, which is completely illegal, at least in the United States. Okay. Now imagine what we learned today. If this is implemented on a human without their knowledge or consent, they are now a stingray.
Yes. Well, it's such a big story, and the time for this information to come out is now. I'm seeing so many people, Catherine Hartledge, Sean Ryan, Alex Jones has covered this with you, of course. We've seen so many people coming forward. 60 Minutes just did a piece on this too. The thing is about this, so many people are being used and abused. It's time for this to be exposed. I mean, I saw even Kim.com a week ago. He said this and people like scoffed at it. Palantir's marketing director didn't scoff at it. He told Kim he's a liar, he's made it all up. He almost, by doing that, just gave him more credibility. Kim.com said that President Trump is being spied on, Elon Musk is being spied on. They're all being spied through Palantir-based technology. We just learned, by the way, that Palantir has some kind of super surveillance software called Maven that up until last week was basically using the most advanced AI, Claude, through Anthropic. And what was our response immediately to the chance of that, the prospect of that technology being taken back? We threatened basically to treat Anthropic like they were a Chinese state-owned company, okay, like an enemy of the people. The real enemy of the people is anyone who's using this technology against good, hardworking citizens of both America, United Kingdom. We know it's been used for communication. We know it's been used for torture. We know it has been used for manipulation. There won't be elections anymore if they do this, by the way. You don't have to hack a machine anymore. You just have to hack a brain.
Correct. Yeah, all of this BCI computer technology, all of the major social media platforms, Google, Meta, even the telecom companies, everyone's fighting for position to get there first. And the fact is that, we learned through Rafe, and we've already known this because we covered this topic, is that there are no laws that prevent this from happening. I can go and build a device like this and start transmitting subliminals to you. And just imagine, I'm an ethical hypnotherapist. If you are unethical and you understand techniques like neuro-linguistic programming, how to subliminally program anyone to do anything, imagine how powerful a weapon that could be. For those of you who know my work, Aaron Alexis contacted me and he was going through this and he wanted my help. I had no idea he was going to go and do what he was going to do. And he went and killed 12 people at the Navy Yard, and in the butt of his rifle, he inscribed ELF, extremely low frequency, okay? I know darn well that he was exposed to this. I've been doing this for a long time. I know when someone is legit and when someone's not. That was Aaron Alexis. Then we got the Myron May case, who was the attorney out of Florida. Same thing. And he didn't want to go through the process. He said he had bigger fish to fry. I thought he was going to go and sue someone, and he went and killed people in the research facility at the University of Florida. Yeah. My point is that if you know how to use these techniques and you implement them, my voice is a frequency. These RF signals that are being transmitted that we, thank God there's race in the world. I want, for those of you out there who are watching this, this man is a hero because he cares. He has that human side in him. And for all of you out there in the intelligence agencies and the government agencies, if you think you're immune, you're not, because eventually this is going to be used on you. And maybe it's not. What about your children, your great-grandchildren, your genealogy to come, okay? Do you want to roll the dice that it's not going to happen to any one of them? Well, I challenge you out there to come forward, be the next Rafe. Be the next hero to try to save the human experience, to save your children.
Where can they contact you at? Where can they contact you?
If you think you're being subjected to anything like this and you need help or guidance or coaching, you can contact us at mindnexuslive.com. And our staff is very diligent in making sure they answer any inquiries that are out.
Mindnexuslive.com. You see on the screen there. If you're one of those people that are being attacked, or you're Rafe, you're a whistleblower, you're someone that knows more about this, can help expose this, because that's what we need. If this becomes common knowledge in the population, just by the selfishness of human beings, trust me, there will be action, because no one is safe. The very elite are exposed to this. Thus, there is an incentive to do something to stop its terroristic use.
Correct. Absolutely. This is the fight to save humanity as we know it. Utilizing this text, the new term, and a lot of you have heard me say this, homoborgenesis. You are no longer human. You're a GMO. You're patentable. Is that what you want for your kids? Think about it. Do something. Stand up now.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the agenda. If you've been watching through this power-packed hour, God bless you. Because look, this information is far more interesting than the Iran war. It involves the Jeffrey Epstein files, and it also has repercussions which could end society. And on behalf of my guest, Jesse Beltran, I'm your host, Edward Zoll. God bless you, and take care.
Thank you for being part of The Agenda.